Hello everyone, welcome back to part 2 of Scream Movie Talk. If you haven't watched part 1 yet, there will be a link showing up in this video right about now, and you can go ahead and check that out. Now, we're going to just jump right into the rest of this conversation. So, last time we left off, it was, Sydney was at Tatum's house. Dewey was there to protect her, and, she got the call from the killer, and you think it's not Billy because he's locked up, but we already talked about the fact that that doesn't matter in this series at all. Everyone's a suspect. So keeping that in mind, we move on to the next part of the movie. They go to school the next day. There are a couple of mishaps at the school. We get that scene with the principal and it's not super relevant to me. It's just a miniature plot point. I don't really talk that much about it. So let's get to the next biggest part of the movie, which is when there's a party at Stu's house. Stu decides to throw a party, and so Tatum convinces Sydney that it'll be fun and that it'll be a good time. So she decides to go, and while they're there, Randy's giving the scary movie talk. Well, before he gives that talk, and Tatum really should have stayed for it, she goes off by herself to go grab some beers from the garage. And we should all know that Tatum is breaking all the rules of scary movies. She's promiscuous in a sense that she has sex with Stu, and or at least it's implied that they're in a sexual relationship, and she is your average blonde girl. She should have hindered to the rules of horror movies: don't drink, don't have sex, and don't go off alone. They're all horrible choices. So she goes off to get something to drink. She goes off to get the beer alone. And in the garage, she runs into Ghostface. And this scene is one of my favorites from the movie, not because of the way that she dies by the hands of Ghostface, but I like the fact that she actually puts up a fight, because very seldom do we get a girl who's being chased by the killer in a movie to actually put up somewhat of a fight. But in the Scream series, that is way different. Like, in all of the movies, in some way, the victims do try to save themselves from the killer, which I appreciate. I like the fact that they don't just succumb most of the time. I mean, there are a couple characters that are just killed immediately by surprise, but everyone who comes in encounter with Ghostface generally tries to protect themselves. And Tatum's no different. Tatum fights back. She throws beer cans. She tries to get out the door. She does a bunch of things to try and fend Ghostface off. And Ghostface, let's be honest, is very clumsy in this scene, falling over things and tripping over things, and generally actually like getting hit by Tatum by certain things. So she puts up a decent fight, but of course we know this is Scream. She's going to get caught. She's the next victim. She tries to escape out the cat door that's in the garage, attached to the garage door, which, may I add, is a really weird place to put your cat door. Like, I've never seen that before in a house. If you've ever seen it before in a house, I'd love to know if you could put it in the comments, because I'm actually genuinely curious to know if this is a real thing in some parts of the world. I've never seen this before. Never. It's the weirdest place. Usually you put your cat door, your dog door on your actual front door or your back door or something like that. Never on your garage door. I don't even know how that would work, honestly, like with the garage door open and close correctly. Well, anyway, that's besides the point. She tries to escape through the cat door, but she gets stuck halfway through. She doesn't crawl through it correctly. I mean, she could have gotten out if she didn't have one of her arms stuck in the way. So Ghostface, surprise, surprise, opens the garage door and it crushes her, which in real life, I don't think that would work, because the garage door would probably have sensors to prevent something from that from happening. But this is a movie. It's got to have plot armor in that sense, that it makes dumb plot choices that in real life wouldn't actually work, but it has to work for the regards of the movie. So I'm gonna let that pass because the death scene is quite iconic and quite famous for the first movie. Her scene is, at least. Not as iconic as Casey Becker's, but still pretty famous in the Scream series. Probably for its ridiculousness. Because there are a lot of ridiculous deaths in the Scream series, but this one kind of takes the cake for something that is not realistically possible. And if you actually do think it's possible, I'd love to hear your reasoning in the comments as well, so hit me up with that too. So after this, we get a flash to a scene with Billy and Sydney's finally given up the goods to him, basically. So she's breaking one of the rules in horror movies: don't have sex. And we're getting this mirrored through a scene with Randy explaining the rules of horror movies. Everyone at the party is actually watching Halloween in the background, which is quite ironic. Another slasher movie, which was probably an inspiration for a lot of slasher movies of the time. But they were watching Halloween. I find it very meta that they're watching Halloween, but okay. So this movie has a lot of meta situations and moments. But that's one of the things that I love about it. So Randy's explaining the rules of horror movies. He's a horror fan. He's a horror geek. He tells you, don't have sex. You can't have sex. Don't drink excessively or at all. And the biggie is, don't go off alone or off by yourself. And then Stu is there at the party and he makes a joke. I'm going to go off and get a beer. Does anyone want one? I'll go off alone, basically, as a little joke to Randy, like, ha ha, I don't care about what you just said. Now we get our moment where the killer is starting to show up. A very important plot device for this whole sequence of the movie is that Gail and her cameraman had put a camera inside of the house to spy on the kids and listen to what they're talking about. The camera is on a 30-second delay, which is also very important. We get a call from the school. Someone calls the house, and Randy answers it. And then he finds out that the principal's body that had been killed earlier, like I said, it was a little bit of a plot point, but not too important in my eyes. The principal had been gutted by Ghostface and hung up in the football field. And all the other kids got really excited and wanted to go see his dead body. I don't know. Kids are weird. Kids are a little messed up. I guess I'll give them that. Like, they're not the best at decisions and stuff like that. So this is a plot development or a plot device to get all of the extra characters to leave the premise, which is really important to the movie. So Randy's left by himself in the living room, and he's laying on the couch. While Dewey actually shows up and goes to Gail and her news reporter in their news van, and he asks Gail if she'd like to come investigate a suspicious vehicle with him, a nearby abandoned car. So the attendees, like I said, are drawn away after hearing the news about the principal's death, so at least Sydney, Billy, Randy, Stu, and Gail's cameraman, Kenny, and then Gail and Dewey themselves. And Gail and Dewey have discovered that the car belongs to Neil Prescott, Sydney's father. So at this point, it has been presumed that Neil has been behind all of these deaths that have been happening because someone rerouted those calls to be traced to his phone. And he's nowhere to be seen because they could not get a hold of him at his hotel, so further suspicion is falling on him. So they find Neil's car, Mr. Prescott's car, Sydney's father, behind the house, or like around the house, around Stu's home in the woods. So they find the car and they return back to the house. Going back to what Billy and Sydney are doing. After they have sex, they're attacked by Ghostface, who quote unquote kills Billy, and Sydney narrowly escapes from the house, and she has to actually jump through the window, and this is like a thing that becomes a thing in Scream movies after this, the whole girl has to jump through a window or jump off out a window, something like that. They become the queens of window jumping. just like your lovely Halloween queens of window jumping. So Sydney escapes and she goes out because she sees the news van outside of the house. She goes out and seeks help from Kenny. But while she's trying to seek help from Kenny, she gets in the van with him, and we go back to that footage, that recording that Gail and Kenny, the news van guy, the guy who does all of her video recordings for her, they put that camera inside the house. We go back to that, and we see Randy alone in the living room, and then Ghostface is walking behind him, and it's quite ironic because he's yelling something about "it's right behind you" as it happens. And he slumps back onto the couch, and we see Ghostface behind him in the camera footage. But then we remember that it's on a 30-second delay, so as Kenny opens that door, the Ghostface is already there, and he slashes his throat. And then Sydney escapes from the news van by sneaking out the back and runs back to the house. So at this point, everyone believes that Neil is the killer and has come to the party to continue his spree because they found his vehicle abandoned on the property. So Gail, she tries to escape in her van, but as she goes to her van, she notices the disgusting amount of blood, and even with Kenny's dead body on her van, she still tries to escape. Gail tries to escape, and then she has to swerve off to the road because Sydney runs into the road. So meanwhile, Dewey, who went inside the house, is stabbed in the back while investigating the house, and Sydney runs up to the house and she takes his gun, and then she is like inside the foyer or like the entryway to the house, and we get this moment where Stu and Brandy both appear at the same time and accuse each other of being the killer. So Sydney doesn't know who to suspect at this point, so she can't believe either of them, and she closes the door on both of them. And she retreats into the house, where she actually finds Billy wounded but still alive. So she trusts Billy, presumably, and she gives him the gun, and he lets Randy into the house, and then he immediately turns on everyone and said, "Everyone gets a little crazy sometimes, you know that line." And then he pulls out the gun that Sydney just gave him and pops Randy in the chest, in the shoulder area, and he shoots him. So Billy then reveals that he has feigned his injuries and he's actually the killer, and we get this moment where he licks the fake blood on him, and he's like, tastes like corn syrup, just like the blood they used in Carrie. And at this moment, I think it's kind of interesting because we actually get this notion that Billy knows a lot more about horror movies than he ever let on to know. At this point, we all thought that Randy was the expert, but you could kind of say that Billy's a decent expert on the whole idea of the horror movie, because we now find out that at this point, Sydney has now found out that Stu and Billy are both the killers. So they were both working together to be Ghostface, and all these occurrences of Ghostface make sense at this point now that we know there's two killers. And I also just really like the fact that there's two killers. Usually the movie only has that one like overpowered, superpowered, like unkillable force like Jason or Freddy or Michael, unkillable, just one powerhouse. But these are just two teenage boys who decided they wanted to be killers. And then they explain the reasoning behind it. And it's, he has a motive, but I don't really consider it a really huge motive. So they discuss their plan to kill Sydney, and they joke around saying, "You popped your cherry, you broke the horror movie trope rules. now you're no longer a final girl. You're no longer a pure virgin of a final girl. And they reveal to Sydney that they are going to blame her father for everything. They were the ones who traced his phone to all their calls that they had made. They're the ones who actually kidnapped her father. That's the reason why they never got a hold of him on the phone earlier in the movie. And they have him tied up in the closet, and they reveal him to her, and they slip the voice modulator in his pocket. They slip the cell phone in his pocket, and they then explain to her exactly why they did this. It all stems back to Sydney's mother. We didn't really discuss her too deeply because it wasn't too deep of a plot line until now. Sydney's mother died about a year ago, and she was murdered. And she was murdered presumably by a man named Cotton Weary, because Sydney thought she saw a man with Cotton's appearance leave the house because the man was wearing Cotton's jacket. The reason why they chose Cotton was because Cotton was actually sleeping with Sydney's mother. Her mother was a bit promiscuous in a way and did sleep around just a little bit. They were angry about this, especially Billy, because Sydney's mother had actually slept with Billy's father, and that is what made Billy's mother leave him. So Billy only has his father. And this is a point that's already been made earlier on in the movie, where Billy tries to justify Sydney's feeling of loss by saying, I don't have a mother either, but she justifies right back saying, at least yours is alive. Billy and Stu actually revealed to Sydney that they were the ones who killed her mother, not Cotton Weary. They framed Cotton Weary for it. And they killed her because she was having an affair with Billy's father, which, like I said, drove his mother away. At this point in their conversation, Gail, who's actually survived the crash, she intervenes. This happens as the boys start stabbing each other to make it look like they are the victims as well, and they'll be the only living victims. Billy has stabbed Stu a couple of times at this point, and he's bleeding pretty profusely. He's kind of losing it. He has these funny lines, like the classic feeling a little woozy here kind of lines. Gosh, Stu's acting is hilarious in these scenes. So comedic all the way through. Love his actor. So amazing. Matthew Lillard is hilarious in this movie. So, like I said, the boys had just started stabbing each other to make it look like that they were victims themselves. This becomes a prevalent thing in the Scream movies. Like, sometimes the Ghostface does make it look like they were a victim themselves. This is something that will come back in later installments of the franchise, specifically in Scream 4. Gail, like I said, she survived that crash that she had earlier, and she intervenes by pointing the gun at the boys. The gun that they had abandoned outside for some reason, stupidly on their part, and Sydney takes advantage of this to turn the tables on them. She knocks Billy out, and then she gets chased through the house by Stu, who is really injured at this point, right? Really injured, and she gets him to fall down. He trips because he probably has some blood loss. It's making him dizzy. And she drops the television set on his head, and as she's dropping it, it's playing one of the scenes from Halloween, which I think is kind of cool. And then static electricity, and he is presumably dead. Billy then awakens from his knocked out state that Sydney left him in, and she gets attacked by Billy. Sydney gets attacked by him. But Gail shoots him, and this time the safety is actually off. Because the reason why Gail didn't just shoot them in the first place was because she forgot to turn the safety off on the gun. So she actually does shoot Billy this time, and then Randy is revealed actually to be alive. He's wounded, but he's alive. And he remarks that the killer always resurfaces for one last scare. He says, "Be careful. He's not dead yet. He always comes back for one last scare." And Sydney takes the gun and shoots Billy in the head as he's coming up for that scare, killing him for good, and she says, "Not in my movie." As the sun rises and the police arrive, Sydney takes her father out of the closet and starts taking the duct tape off of his face. One thing that I thought was weird about this scene when she's taking the duct tape off of her father's face is that she asks the very injured Randy, who cannot use one of his arms, to come and help her, and he does absolutely nothing in this scene. I think it's really strange. I don't know why he got called over to help her. I thought this was a really weird little scene. I think that they meant to have her ask Gail to help. I think. I'm not sure, but I don't know. It's just a really weird scene to me, that little scene right there. So they have the police and ambulances are arriving. We find out that Dewey isn't dead. He's just badly injured, and he's taken away by the ambulance. And then Gail, she steps away from the carnage. We see that she's injured by the scratches and the scrapes on her face and her tousled hair, but she still wants to make that news report. And as we pan out, as we get a pullback from the house, I love this ending scene. Gail makes an impromptu news report about the night's events. And if you notice her closing statements, they make a nod to the original title of the series, Scary Movie, and then the new title, Scream. The movie was originally supposed to be called Scary Movie, but they changed it very late on into production to Scream because I guess they thought it sounded a little bit better. So they had some lines where they had used the gimmick of saying this is all a scary movie or something like that. And they had to come up with a new way to say this is a Scream or started with a Scream. They had to put the title in there somehow. I don't know, at times it sounds a little weird, like when Stu is saying the one line in the kitchen, it's just a scream, baby. I don't know if I really care for that. I don't know if it makes a lot of sense because originally, if you go from the original title, he's supposed to say it's just a scary movie, and that makes a lot more sense. I think it's a little weird, but I guess they just wanted the title to be in there in that line for some reason. I don't know. I think it would have been okay if they kept it as just a scary movie and just made a nod to that original title. I think it would have been okay. Well, that wraps up my Scream movie talk. And now I just want to tell you some of the cool updates for Scream 5. So, as all of us Scream fans know, Scream 5 is a done deal at this point. We know it's happening. We don't know that the title is going to be Scream 5 yet, because the only hints about the title that we've seen, the only title cards that we've seen are the ones on the backs of the chairs for cast and directors and crew. The director's chairs that they keep on sets. And we do see that there is a logo that just simply says Scream with a little slash through it. So this isn't proof that this will be the final title card for the movie. There have been changes in the past for Scream movie logos. Take Scream 3, for example. It was something completely different before. It was just Scream 3. So I'm assuming that they'll just go with Scream 5, and I'm honestly hoping that they do. Another thing that we got just recently is a picture on the 29th of October on the Scream Twitter. If you're not following the Scream Twitter and you want news about the Scream movies, totally recommend it. Obviously not, sponsored by Scream. That'd be cool, right? But no. I just it's a good source of information for the Scream movies. They do drop us little hints within the Twitter. Also, if you want good information about what's happening on set, it's great if you follow the cast members, the current cast members. There is a cast list for the movie. We know who's going to be in it. and you can follow them on Twitter to see updates. Sometimes they post videos of after production hours where they're just hanging out with other crew members, and we don't know too much. Like I said, we don't know in the way of photos. We've seen a couple set photos that prove that this is probably taking place in the same town as the original Scream movie. A lot of the cars look a little older in the pictures, so that's kind of interesting. I know some fans have been theorizing that this is just a prequel or a sequel to, well, a sequel to the original Scream, like maybe like an in-between time or like a right after, something like that could possibly be a thing. So we did get this picture update from the Twitter on the 29th of October, just like I was saying. It says, giving and it has a knife emoji, a little test. So giving the knife a little test, and there's a pumpkin in a director's chair. And in the pumpkin carving, there is a ghost face. So I'm assuming from this that we can confirm that Ghostface is obviously going to be in this movie. I mean, I would hope so. So we know that Courtney Cox, David Arquette, and yes, Neve Campbell is coming back. They did get Neve Campbell back. I'm really glad that the original three are coming back because they knew Wes Craven so well, and I'm very nervous personally. I don't know about how any of you guys feel about it, but I'm personally nervous about somebody else taking the torch from Wes Craven because I love Wes Craven. He was such an amazing director. He was such an amazing filmmaker, and he made a lot of horror franchise tropes that we now see today in a lot of horror movies. He cemented those. He cemented the idea of killing off your supposed final girl in the beginning act. He gave these revolutionary ideas to the horror community, and he unfortunately isn't with us anymore. So it makes me nervous to know that someone is taking his baby, his creation of Scream, and making another movie, because he was a part of every single Scream film. He made them, and just knowing that he won't be there for this one is just really saddening to me in a way, I guess. Not that I'm not happy that we're getting a new one. I am excited. I'm just nervous about where it'll be taken. I mean, look at what happened with Scream 3 because it didn't have good guidance from any of the people who were usually involved with Scream. It only had Wes Craven there. It didn't have Kevin Williamson. So here's to hoping that Scream 5 actually turns out good. So we also did get a quote from one of the newcomers to the series. Jenna Ortega is in the movie that is currently in production, and she said in an interview, "It fits perfectly in the franchise. Also, how incredible that we have the main cast coming back. That is insane to me. Throughout the years, the franchise has done really well at calling back and bringing some sort of nostalgic aspects to the script. I'll definitely say that there are some here." So hopefully this quote means that we will be seeing Wes Craven's vision in this movie, that it won't be someone else's new take on Scream. I'm really hoping that this stays true to the series, stays true to the franchise. If one of the actors from the set is saying that it perfectly fits into the franchise, I'm hoping that this is the truth. And I think everyone else is hoping that as well. So if you guys are looking forward to Scream 5, if you guys have any more information that you want anyone else to know, go ahead and add it in the comments below. If you would like to make any comments on what I've talked about so far in this video or in any other video, go ahead and leave a comment below. And I know this video is a day later than I said it was going to be, but my teaching schedule is unpredictable. I am a teacher, so sometimes I can't adhere to my upload schedule, and I apologize for that. I will try and make daily videos or every other day videos at this point. I know I said I'll post daily videos, but I've decided that I don't think that's feasible with my work schedule at this current time. My school is in America, and we're considering a hybrid plan, and that is taking a lot of planning out of my day. So expect videos every other day at least, pending I don't have some sort of work emergency to deal with. Well, I hope everyone has a great rest of their day, and until next time.